All right, German metal fans, once again, today I'm going to talk about Accept. Um, Definitely one of the best, most influential German bands, metal bands in general, in all metal history. So let me first give you a little backstory on me and Accept and how I got into them. First of all, I had no idea who they were when I first got into metal, but I remember getting on the internet in the early days of dial-up and all that junk, and looking up bands on, like on CD sites and junk like that, like Columbia House back when they had a site and was a thing. I would look up metal bands. Back then it was like Metallica, Slayer, and junk like that. But then it always recommend bands, and I remember it always recommended Accept, no matter what band I was looking up, it seemed. I could look up Metallica, you might like Accept. You can look up Slayer, you might like Accept. Pantera, you might like Accept. Like, it didn't matter what it was, but I'd always recommended Accept, so I always thought Accept was like some really, really heavy band. But I never really did check them out for some reason. I don't know, because it was throwing a bunch of stuff at me. But anyway, so I had no idea what Accept was. I just thought they were like a really heavy band, and later on, I met my friend Dave when I was around like 17, 18 years old. And we went to like a flea market, and we were looking through vinyls, and he pulled out Accept Balls to the Wall. And I was like, oh, Accept, I've heard of them. They're like really heavy, aren't they? And he's like, not really. They're kind of like a heavier AC/DC. And I was like, what? Why did he keep recommending that to me? Is what I was thinking. And I remember looking at the album cover to Balls of the Wall, and I was sitting there thinking, like, this looks stupid. Like, this does not look like a good album. I mean, it's still like one of the dumbest album covers ever. A guy's leg holding a ball, like, whatever. So fast forward, I finally got to hear Accept. Dave, once again, somehow got a compilation, like a 80s rock compilation or something, that like his mom might have got for him or something. You know how moms are. Oh, you like rock and roll, you like heavy metal. Okay, well, here's the Eagles. But Dave's mom bought him a couple compilations, I think, and I think that's where that came from. But I remember it had like stuff like Toto and stuff on, but I remember it had Accept Balls to the Wall, and that was the first time I ever heard Accept, and I was probably, I don't know, probably 19 years old or so. And I remember kind of thinking, like, you know what, like, that's a pretty cool song. I can see like the AC/DC in it, with Udo's voice, which, the band doesn't really sound like AC/DC, maybe mildly at times, but all in all, not really. So that's how I got into Accept. I ended up buying all their CDs, and I just remember thinking, like, Accept, like, okay, Balls to the Wall, maybe they're just one of those one-hit wonder 80s bands or something, and well, I don't know how many hits they've actually had, since the only one I can ever hear is Balls to the Wall, and like, on Ozzy's Boneyard or a local rock station, they might play it. But fact of the matter is, when I actually bought Balls to the Wall, I bought the Balls to the Wall and Restless and Wild like compilation. It's like both albums, but they're all like mixed together, which is really dumb. I remember listening to that and thinking, like, whoa, this is actually a really good band. Like, I hear like modern power metal like influences and everything from this. Like, this is really good. All right, I got a little bit of a distraction there and had to come back. And now we're back with a storm and rain. Now that's metal. So let's talk about Accept some more. So I'm only going to do a ranking of the first 7 Accept albums with Udo. Because to me, Udo and Accept just go hand in hand, and that's the only Accept I've really ever listened to be honest with you. So let's start. My 7th least favorite Accept album would have to be the self-titled Accept album. That is their first album, and it's an okay start. It came out in 1979. it feels like it's a little non-cohesive as a whole. Although there are some good tracks, but a lot of it just sounds experimental and they sound a little lost for what they want to do. You know, I don't know except song titles as well as some other bands. I know some, I'm getting, the older I get, the worse I get with song titles. But I know songs like Lady Lou is good. I think there's something on there about war or something. I don't know. It's kind of heavy for its time. But, you know, there's a lot of songs on there that are just kind of like hard rock trying to go metal for its time. And sometimes it just falls flat on its face and it becomes not as interesting. So, okay, that's 7th. 6th, I'm going to go with Russian Roulette. This album, along with the first self-titled Accept album, Russian Roulette is one of the albums I've listened to the least. And I've tried it a bunch of times. Well, at least a handful of times. And every time I listened to it, I always felt it didn't catch me immediately. It just kind of, I would listen to it and I'd be like, yeah, it's all right. Because usually Accept albums, I listen to it and I'm drawn in immediately. And I'm like, this is great. But Russian Roulette is just good. It's a good listen, not an amazing listen. Now the rain's really coming down. But yeah, so TV War is a good song. There's probably about 3 or 4 really, really good songs on Russian Roulette. But I feel like a lot of them just kind of go over your head and just don't try anything super new. It's kind of a plain Accept album for me. All right, number 5, believe it or not, I'm going to go with I'm a Rebel. This is their second album, and you can kind of hear a little bit of them still trying to find their sound. But I have to say, I feel like the songs here are much catchier than the first album and Russian Roulette. So, you know, you got the title track, starts off with I'm a Rebel. It's actually a pretty fun song. It's not exactly like typical Accept, but it's a pretty good song. I like it. The second track on that album, I don't even remember the name of it, but honestly, that is a great song with a great chorus. And, you know, most of this album's pretty catchy. There's a couple songs that are weird. There's even some, like, weird, almost disco-sounding bass in some songs, which it's kind of off-putting, but it's not horrible. But but it's a good album. Let's see here. Number 4... Breaker. Breaker is the first album that really starts to sound like a regular Accept album. And this one has one of the last ones I ever bought, if you can believe that. And this one has just gone up the ranks. I really, really like this one. It's just good, solid Accept in its most like pure, plainest form. You know, there's still a little bit of experiments, but it's not bad. By this time, they actually have a style. It's like, we're Accept. This is what we do. Okay, we got it now. And I don't know. I really like it. What's that first track? Starlight kicks off really good. Heck, like the first 3 songs or so are just great. And then there's like one song that's just like a bunch of like Udo cursing, basically. But definitely beats that Nazareth song, that Hair of the Dog or whatever. Yeah, definitely a lot more cursing in that. But yeah, so there's that. Breaker's really good. So number 3, this is where it gets a little trickier. And honestly, I've been really thinking hard about this, but I think number 3, I'm going to go with Metal Heart. Asked me to do this video a year or 2 ago, I probably would have put this first. I used to say this was my favorite Accept album, but since I've bought Restless and Wild and Balls to the Wall separately, I have them both, you know, instead of that compilation with both albums just mixed together. Now I can actually listen to the albums the way they were meant to be listened to, and now I have a whole new respect for them. Already loved them to begin with, but now I can actually like separate the two better in my mind. But yeah, Metal Heart has been pushed third now. There's some great songs on this. However, there are some songs like Screaming for a Love Bite or whatever, songs like that I hear a little bit of commercialism trying to creep in. Now, this isn't horrible. This isn't total hair metal. This isn't garbage or anything. But it's there, and it kind of loses some points just for that. But man, some songs like Metal Heart, Wrong is Right, oh boy, Dogs on Leads, Too High to Get It Right. And there's that one song that sounds like almost like some kind of James Bond secret spy stuff or whatever. Like, that's one of the weirdest but coolest Accept songs. And whatever that last track is, forget the name of that, it's really good. It's like the songs that are good are really, really good. And that's why that album used to be my favorite. But there's just a certain touch to a couple more albums that just kind of edge it out. So second, I will have to go with, this is hard, by the way, Balls to the Wall, which this could almost be first, and I'll tell you why. While most Accept albums have some tracks that don't stand up to others, but there's always like one or two tracks per Accept album. Not all of them, but some of them. Balls to the Wall does not have these tracks. Balls to the Wall, well, okay, I'll take that back. Maybe the last track might be the least interesting. It's a little more ballady, but I think it's the last track. I can't remember, but somewhere towards the end, there's one song that's okay. It's not the best, but it's okay. But really, every song on the album is just great. And it starts off with Balls to the Wall. That is one of those songs that hasn't been overly worn out for me for the radio, and I still get a lot of joy out of that song. It's still just want to shout balls to the wall every time I hear it. And that was the first Accept song I ever heard. I still love it as much as I did the first time I heard it. And of course, like every song on the album, like London Leather Boys or whatever, like songs like that's cool. I don't know. There's just the whole album. Just I forget how good each song is. You think, oh well, there's going to be like a real weak point somewhere, and it's like it just doesn't really happen. So it's just a really good, solid album. One of the most solid they have. Of course, that album cover is stupid, but anyway. And first, and this is just almost on a whim, but I listened to Balls to the Wall and this album back to back. Restless and Wild might edge things out. It might just edge out the other ones just by a sliver. And I'll tell you why. I feel like Balls to the Wall is more cohesive and solid, but Restless and Wild has songs that are just too dang metal to ignore. Starting off with Fast as a Shark, I mean, that is the heaviest Accept song, I think, in the whole discography. If you ask me, it's borderline, it's basically speed metal for its time. When this album came out, like 82, I think that's a pretty heavy song for its time. And it's got a very power metal chorus, which is really cool. But, so yeah, it starts off like that. And honestly, this whole album is I kind of think this is probably the heaviest Accept album in general. The song Restless and Wild, Ahead of the Pack, I think is the third track. There's like Demon's Night. That's a heavy one. And I can't remember all the titles, but this album's pretty solid. It kind of dips down maybe in the middle of it, like Neon Nights is okay, not one of my top favorites, but it's good. There's another song before that, I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but yeah, I think this album's it's just got a metal factor that you can't ignore, and you know it sounds good. It sounds really in your face for its time, kind of dirty and in your face all at the same time. Whereas Balls to the Wall, actually, it really does have the best guitar tone, I think, of any Accept album. It's got a really good sound, but Restless and Wild is just dirty and in your face, and I can't ignore that. So I can't believe how my tastes for Accept have changed. Sometimes that happens. Maybe I'll do another video in a year and I'll probably say something completely different. I don't know. But right now, this is where I stand. And one of these days, I'll check out some later Accept. I don't know. I kind of did the same thing with like Halloween. Like without Kai Hansen or Michael Kiske, I kind of think, well, Halloween wasn't Halloween. Then I eventually started buying some later Halloween albums with what's his name, Andy Darris or whatever. So I don't know, and I like those albums. So I'll eventually explore later Accept at some point. But anyway, if you like this video, like, subscribe, comment what's your favorite Accept albums. Stay metal. See you later.